Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversations. I'm Jeff Rabinowitz, and in this session, we're bringing in voices from all sides to challenge assumptions, bridge divides, and build a better understanding of today's biggest issues. And I'm back with the A team: Kevin Howard, Beth Derrico, and Charlie Heinemann, the gang. Hello, good morning. How's everybody doing?
Fantastic.
And how about you, Beth?
Piss and rain here, but it's a good day.
Me too. It's raining. Well, you're in Florida as well, so that makes sense,
I am.
right?
I am.
Yeah, that's the one common denominator. Kevin, where are you at again?
Hey, I am doing great. I am not where I normally would be, which would have been Hood River, Oregon. I am in beautiful Santa Barbara, California, attending the Illuminate Film Festival. And I'm here pitching, you wouldn't believe this, I'm pitching an independent film project called, and the working title is America, Was It All Just a Dream? Maybe we'll get into that too. But I'm loving life out here in Santa Barbara, California.
We are going to get into that. That sounds interesting. That sounds really interesting. And Kevin is the author of, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book real quick, Kevin? Because
the book is called Onward at Last. And the 2024 presidential election edition. It was originally published by Atmosphere Press back in December 2022. And but the themes that I spoke about, which is what is true about the virtues, values, and narratives we are told that help define how we see ourselves, how we see each other, and how we understand the world around us. That's what I was writing about. And then the 2024 election occurred, and I wrote a new chapter and produced a new edition called America at the Crossroads. And the reason why is that the short answer is not much. And that manufactured consent that's happening, where we're being told a bunch of lies that manipulates how we see each other and how we see the world, has caused the problems that we face today. And so that's why so on the basis of that book, we created a fictional story to tell, and now that working title for that fictional story for a potential independent film is called America, Was It All Just a Dream? So that's the book, that's the movie project, and we're here in Santa Barbara, California, trying to see if we can find some independent producers to participate.
Wow, that sounds really interesting.
Very cool.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to talk about the film as well, but also where we're at now. So let me just make a quick point. I don't think we're winning the battle, but we sure are fighting a good fight. So recently, I guess you could say Elon Musk stepped aside from Doge. He's going to be there, he says, 2 days a week. And then he proclaimed his victories. Okay, so initially he said he was going to save the taxpayers $2 trillion in the first 100 days. Then he narrowed it down to $1 trillion, and at the 100-day mark, he announced he's stepping down because I think his car company's in jeopardy. I think he's really losing some credibility with the whole affiliation with Doge. And he announced he saved the taxpayers. So he went from $2 trillion to $1 trillion. He said he saved the taxpayers $160 billion. Now I still argue that figure, because there was an $8 billion saving, allegedly, that was an $8 million saving. That was a Homeland Security contract, and somebody pointed out to him the whole budget's $8 billion, so how could you have saved $8 billion? And then they realized it was an $8 million contract. So that being the case would put us at $152 billion. So we fought a good fight. We stymied their efforts. Doge didn't get anywhere near where they had hoped. I don't think they're even anywhere near the 160 Elon Musk is touting. But my question
it cost us.
Huh?
I think it cost us, right?
I think in canceling contracts definitely cost money. Those are called contractual agreements. So I don't think there was any savings. I think the whole thing was hype. Trump still talks about $7 trillion in new investments in America. Nobody's seen any of that or heard any of that. But it's antics. It's reality TV. It's a president that's very good at those two things. But what's next? Where are we at? I mean, like Charlie said, I took a look at the map for 2026, the midterms. The fact of the matter is, Republicans are going to keep the Senate. There's a concern that they may even gain some seats. There's a chance we could retake the House, which would be great. I was more concerned with the Senate just because of judges. You know, Charlie, we have a judge's issue. But and another thing though is a judge that was nominated, appointed to the court, not an appellate court, but a high enough court, ruled against Trump, and the and the Enemies Act. You can't use the Enemies Act to just randomly deport people, and that was a judge appointed by Trump. So that's my right there. I wanted to kick it off with that and see what you guys think.
Well, I think, overall, there's some good signs of the judicial holding against, some of the craziest stuff that's gone on in these first 100 days. I think, again, the issue always has been that, the question initially was, how would the judiciary really handle this, and how would they fare and stand up to some of these things? And then the other question is, regardless how much damage is done anyway, and how much of it is either irreversible or will take decades to fix. And I think that's the concern with a lot of these things.
So, Kevin?
Yeah, well, see, I mean, once again, we are getting caught up in the weeds and missing the bigger picture itself. Whether you're talking about the impact on Doge from Elon Musk, or you talking about the variety of the flutter of activities and executive orders that the president has put out, the effects will only be known over time. The idea that you guys have any idea based on where we are right now, how much is saved, what hasn't worked, what effect things are going to have. We have to let that play out. The biggest moves are going to be etched in stone depending on Trump's first budget. The first budget battle coming up over the summer, leading to his first fiscal year starting on October 1st, right, will either formalize his tariffs, will either restructure the Department of Education, right, will either, this is where the impact of what Doge did will be codified. And that's where the fight is. Most of the judicial critique, and it's all legitimate, right, are on issues that are of little concern to the core thread of what Trump is trying to do, right? And so all I'm saying is we can do like everyone else and chase our tails on every one of the threads when Trump, that Trump puts out here to flood the zone and exhaust the resist movement, on things that, right, are outside the boundary of the Constitution and they're not going to stand. Or we could actually focus in on the core threads of what he's trying to do in terms of the tariff structure to reverse globalization, what he's trying to do on the international stage by coming into peace agreements with both Russia and China, ironically, notwithstanding all the language, right, in order to form a new multipolar world, right? Those are the big threads. And we can get lost in the weeds forever with Trump, talking about every stupid thing he does, so that's my take on it.
Well, I agree with obviously the financial stuff, it's purely speculation right now. We're not going to know for months or years. But I mean, for individuals who have lost their jobs, individuals who have been, taken from their homes, separated from their families already, that's an immediate impact for them. Those are when I talk about the courts, that's what I'm really more concerned about at this point, is the immediate impacts for people's daily lives. I think the courts have helped to some degree to slow some of the tragic stories we're already starting to hear.
Well, could you put some context on that, Charlie? Here's the thing, right? On the question of immigration, I absolutely do not advocate for the random deportation of people, or the excesses of what the overall of what's happening in Trump's immigration policy. But how did we get here to this spot? The context is, right, seriously, if you look at President Biden's own Homeland Security Administration when he was running it, they readily admitted that they opened up the border like a sieve and let in 8 to 10 million people with no baseline filters for whether there's a criminal background check, whether or not people had health issues, where they pre-screened for health issues and stuff like that. No, they just let it in like a sieve. So whatever. Yes, Trump is taking a wrecking ball to what Biden did in that regard, sealing up the border and the whole 9 yards. Sure, it's excessive, no doubt about it. But the reason why we got here is that the Biden administration was a radical departure from Obama's immigration policy, let alone Trump one's immigration policy. And a lot of this is a reflexive response, which is what Trump does. But oh, by the way, right? Has everyone forgotten that this is what Bernie was talking about, a political revolution, right? And I would have much rather the Bernie Sanders version of the political revolution, which was to dismantle the economics and the geopolitical project of the neoliberals and neoconservatives. I'd much rather Bernie's version. Instead, the Democratic Party snuffed out the Bernie movement, and they moved to Trump. So now we got to get Trump's version. So this is the context of all this belly aching, because I can tell you this much. Everyone who's suffering today because of the dismantling that's going on is a fragment of the historical suffering that was created by the neoliberal and neoconservative project, which is why Trump won in the first place.
Well, let me build on a few things. One is, and I'm quoting now, primarily, the West primarily attends the Church of Economics and bows down to the god of money. So Trump has become the god of money. That's how he won the election. America is a capitalist society. They look at a billionaire and they say, I lost your sound.
I mean, did Kamala Harris, did they just hand Kamala Harris $1.2 trillion to run a campaign for 3 months?
Well, 1.2 billion.
Well, excuse me, 1.2 billion. Excuse me, $1.2 billion to run a campaign for 3 months, far more than Trump had. Right. One reason why Elon Musk is running back to his companies that are losing money is not because ridiculous people are attacking Teslas. It's because the tariff policy is absolutely catastrophic to his right. Trump wasn't doing a favor to the billionaire class. They may be sucking up to him and trying to get exceptions and stuff like that, but he's going after them.
Well, hang on. Let's just build on the tariffs. I don't want to miss that point. As far as the tariffs are concerned, there's an 85% parts made in America rule. Allegedly, Tesla hits that threshold and is avoiding the tariffs. Only Tesla. So let's be clear on this. This is definitely, what do they call this? Now I forget the word, but Trump is catering to Tesla. Now, I don't think Tesla is going to benefit because 50% of the country will never buy a Tesla again. We call them Democrats. So,
yeah, and the irony there is, and this is how mindless the resist everything movement is, because most of the people who own Teslas are Democrats. Okay,
right? At the moment,
with the dually. This is not Bubba with the dually in Florida and stuff like that driving a Tesla. This
not
is
at all
eating their own. That's what I'm saying. What are you talking
but
about?
The understanding is that we won't. That's called Warren Buffett loves to call it a moat, an emotional bond. That emotional bond with half of his clientele is gone.
No, you missed my point, though, Coach Drippy. People who own Tesla are and they're not burning up their own cars. They're not leaving them at the side of the road. They're their cars.
They're trading them in at a much higher rate than's ever been seen before.
They're to conservatives.
All I can say is right. I mean, Bubba with the dually is not going out to get a Tesla because Elon Musk start gutting some government jobs.
No, they show up in their trucks. They show up in their trucks.
They show up in their trucks. But then the other argument comes, I think he doesn't listen to judges, so we are in a constitutional crisis. He doesn't obey their rulings. I mean, clearly, he's been ordered by an extremely conservative Supreme Court to bring back, and I don't want to say the gentleman's name wrong, but there's a gentleman in El Salvador. I need to look up his name and get it right.
Diego Garcia.
Abrego Garcia is still in El Salvador in a prison. El Salvador is being paid $6 million a year to hold him, and the Supreme Court has ruled that the foundation of America, due process, was not followed. And Trump, a grown man, is literally showing a picture of a photoshopped finger is that they're literally saying now we have reporters taking pictures of his hands and those tattoos are not there, clearly evidencing the fact that he doesn't have those tattoos. And Trump, like a child, argues the point. It's clear he is an MS-13 member because he has these tattoos on his finger, which, mind you, MS-13 even says the leaders have tattoos on their face. Not leaders clearly have tattoos on their face. They're the leaders. Okay. So a gentleman with fake tattoos, Photoshop tattoos, and is still in El Salvador. Trump has been ordered to bring him back, and he does not listen to those judges. 3 of them which he nominated.
Going back to that interview, I have to say, and again, I know the response from the other side will be one of two things. It's always one of two things right now. It's the defense of any policies or the results right now are just wait to the future, look to the future, something that we don't really know about. It's eventually going to get better, or turn around and blame Biden or anything else that happened before Trump. Those are the only two defenses. And so again, it comes in terms of like senility and ability to comprehend things. That interview on ABC, it was really stunning to the point where that thing on that hand, now you see the idea that those 4 symbols, I could see how they're supposed to represent, and it's not that far-fetched. The M for marijuana, the I was that one symbol I forgot, the skull is the 3. I mean, it does make sense, right? But that picture was so clearly Photoshopped. I mean, a child could look at that and go, we see, they're trying to make a point. That's the M, that's the 1, that's the 13. I get it. For him to sit there and try to say with a straight face, I think he really believes it, that no, look, at the actual things are on there. Don't you see it? It's in the picture. How far removed do you have to be from reality to see that clearly is not on his hand? It was never intended to be. I don't think they were trying to fool anyone with that Photoshop. They were trying to explain how those symbols match up, but he doesn't see it. Mm-hmm. So now, again, I'm sure the response is, well, yeah, how out of it was Biden? You're right. It was. That was scary, too. Doesn't change the fact that's he's really, really out of touch and losing it. And if you watch the beginning of this morning's interview on Meet the Press, I mean, he is really, really far gone. Frighteningly so, even beyond what he was before.
Oh, go ahead, Beth. I'm sorry.
No, I 100% agree with Charlie. And when you were saying, we're not going to find out what this is going to cost for years, I don't know that we'll ever find out. Certainly not in this administration, because you can't trust a word anybody in this administration says. I mean, when Pam Bondi says 258 million lives saved, like, so essentially what they're saying is if we hadn't, caught that fentanyl crossing the border, 75% of us would have been gone. 75% of Americans would have been gone. There's only 340 million Americans, in the United States. So if we saved 258 million lives. This just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like,
she put an exclamation point. She goes, "Are you ready for this meeting?" Yes. Turns to the camera and throws out that number. That is our Attorney General. Stunning.
The thing about it is all these people are applying Trump's technique of flooding the zone with all types of virile statements. Let's look at the details of what we're talking about. So the Supreme Court rules that we have to bring this gentleman back, right, because his due process rights were not violated. Okay.
Were violated.
Well, I mean, we're
clearly violated.
His due process rights were not respected. That's what I meant to say. They were violated. You're right, Coach. Okay, so this is one individual within Trump's immigration policy to reverse the 8 to 10 million people that Biden let in 4 years. Okay, whether he abides by the court in this particular case to bring this one guy back or not, right? Okay, it is a trivial impact on the overall policy of what ICE is doing around the country. Okay, the fact is we do have an immigration crisis that America believes we have an immigration crisis. This is why this was an anvil around Kamala Harris's neck, because she was supposed to be the one looking into why we have an immigration policy problem on the border, and she had nothing to say in terms of how we could solve it. Nothing meaningful. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about the weeds. Okay, you could have your head explode at every stupid thing Trump, Pam Bondi, or whatever say, right? And yet we're missing the forest for the trees, right? What is the
I don't think we are.
No, because on top
Really?
of
Really?
Abrego Garcia, there was a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old illegally deported. So
Okay,
now these are lives, and lives matter.
but this is within the context of a broad national policy, right? That the American people fully support. You can take the most outlandish individual cases of anyone's policy of the CARES Act of Obamacare or whatever, and you're going to find exceptional, ridiculous, tragic examples, right?
No, we're not. This isn't the forest. This is the whole forest. The Constitution is the whole forest.
Is the
the
foundation of the
from
forest.
which we
Folks,
you
okay,
can't grow any trees without the foundation, and that is what we are throwing out the door.
We are clearly throwing out the door.
It's this hyperbole that I'm talking about. It's as if all the presidents coming up, and this is not whataboutism, right? But the tension that is inherent to our Constitution is that constitutional actors have prerogative, right? And ultimately, it's the courts who abide. Now, the idea that the Trump administration is not going to listen to the courts, they're just abdicating the courts because they haven't responded to a particular court decision or something like that. We have a long history of presidents going back to Andrew Jackson, going back to Abraham Lincoln, who have done similar acts of it with profound impact.
You just said you weren't going to do whataboutism and then just did it.
No. What I'm trying to say here is the way the Constitution works the way that works in practice is presidents. Trump didn't create the unitary executive idea. That was the idea that the chief executive of the government has a right has all these broad powers. What I'm trying to say is the historical context of how the Constitution works. It's not this little black letter stuff and stuff like that. The Supreme Court says one thing and the entire mechanism jumps to this other thing. No, what I am saying to you here is let's see how this plays out, because the Supreme Court's prerogative will be listened to, right? Well,
let's be clear. Let's go back.
We have time for the constitutional crisis. My point to you all is I'm not. All I'm saying is we can't tell right now. You all are claiming like we can. You all are claiming like, oh yeah, we know how much Doge saved. We know the impact. No, you don't know.
No. I said we won't. We may never know in this administration.
I didn't say I know how much Doge.
Yeah, nobody said that.
Itemizing 100 and something.
That was Elon Musk. I'm not itemizing anything. That was his exit interview. That was him.
But you're interjecting that in this conversation as if even he knows.
No. He was the director of Doge, and all I said was, as Democrats, we're fighting a good fight, and we're not winning, but we are accomplishing. And all I said was the original estimate was $2 trillion, according to Elon Musk, the director of Doge. He then downed it to $1 trillion midway, and in his exit interview, he proclaimed $160 billion in savings. I just said Democrats are fighting the good fight. I did not come up with my own figures. But let me make another point here, because you were talking about the Supreme Court and George Bush. Hang on. Let me just make this other point. The Supreme Court ruled recently that the president, according to a conservative justice, he wrote the ruling. A president has to be bold in his actions. There was a lot of outrage. Trump got a hall pass on a lot of his bullshit with that one ruling. And they said the only one that can call the president out on those bold actions, if they are too bold, if they are outside the law, is the Supreme Court. Now they have clearly called him out on the Abrego Garcia and said, bring him home. And he has clearly not brought him home. So that's not speculation anymore. That's clear presidential divisive action. He is making sure the world knows. He is bullying everybody in America. He's bullying you, a supporter. Because the Supreme Court, when you say work the Supreme Court is being overworked because of his nonsense. And they're answering the questions. They generally hear 40 cases a year. They're going to hit 50 probably this year just because of him.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt about it. And by the way, this is my what I am saying is not about being a supporter of Trump. What I am saying is about what is true about what we're being told. What is true that actually is having broad impact. What is true about why Trump got elected in the first place, right? We have lost the thread of how we wound up here. Why did 78 million Americans vote for him? Why did more Americans in every state in the country vote for him? Why did more women, more young people, more
inflation, prices, the economy, everything he's crashing right now?
That's because of the absolute failure of the adults in the room, because of the absolute failure of the establishment Democrats and the establishment Republicans over the last 30 years. And I get no impression from the three of you that you understand or appreciate the fact that America is just playing out an old Janet Joplin song. You know, freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. They elected him to dismantle the neoliberal, neoconservative project of Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, George W. Bush, Mitt Romney, the whole lot, the Cheneys.
Mitt
right?
Romney and Let me just ask you, do you believe that since Trump that is why he was elected, that is what he was put in office to do? Do you think, in your honest opinion, dig deep, find that honesty, and tell me, do you really think that is where Trump is taking this administration?
He is dismantling the infrastructure of that was
so tear it down and build it back up.
No, look, he only has 4 years. No matter what he says about possible third term, right? We see how that plays out, right? My point is that he is. That's what I'm saying. I'm not a supporter of Trump per se. I was a supporter of the Bernie Revolution, right? The Bernie Revolution was also about dismantling that infrastructure, rejecting
This is not a personal attack. No, I'm sincerely curious. Is this what you really truly believe that's what he's trying to accomplish?
What he's trying to accomplish is what he's saying very expressly. The biggest thing that Doge did was gut USAID. Period. Because this was the vehicle that the intelligence agencies used to funnel trillions of dollars. Yes, trillions of dollars into counterinsurgencies around the world that created the forever wars, right? And so that's why Tulsi Gabbard was appointed to be director of national intelligence to end the forever wars. Yes, he's dismantling the economics and the geopolitics of the neoliberal, neoconservative project. Right, and that is what he's doing. Yeah, I don't think he has any idea of what comes up.
I agree about that.
Here's the irony of the situation. If you look at the economics of America for the last 30 years, right? Okay, who did the neoliberal project help? It created the greatest billionaire class ever. It helped the professional class and destroyed the middle class and the working.
Wait. You're putting that on the neoliberal,
neoconservative project. Bill Clinton in the 90s, George
gotcha. Okay.
Barack Obama, and stuff like that. All of them helped Wall Street. They helped build this billionaire.
So let's be clear.
Except that those billionaires made more money during Trump's administration than any time.
The Trump won,
including the crash.
Including the crash.
And Charlie called it. Charlie called it. If Trump's tariff policy had any result, the American people wouldn't have the resolve to stay in it long enough. Charlie said it would take years. Donald Trump stayed in it 3 days. 3 days he abandoned the 140 most of the tariffs.
You are out of your mind if you think he's abandoned the tariffs.
He made it clear he gave a 90-day hall pass.
The idea is, Elon and the billionaires begged for a reprieve, right? But it's going to be a part of his legislative agenda for this first budget in order for it to take hold. The reason why the world recognizes that he's serious about the tariffs, right? And what I'm trying to tell you here is, see, this is the threat. Trump won was the neocons. He didn't expect to win. And so they brought in all the neocons. By the end of his administration, he had run the neocons off. This is not the same Trump that was there. This is RFK. This is Tulsi Gabbard. This is Elon Musk. Those are centrist Democrats, right? This is not the far right, Heritage Foundation funded. No, this is him representing the working class in the country, the middle class in the country. The people who elected him only have 38% of the GDP of the country. The people who voted for Kamala, the minority, right? Not the majority, right? Have 62%, right? That's where wealth is, okay? The billionaires are like sycophants who come and they're coming to the trough and they're kissing his ring. But he's not serving them. They're trying to save themselves because he's taking a sledgehammer to the economics and the geopolitics that created the wealthiest billionaire class in history, right? That is what he's doing. Yes, he's dismantling, he's destroying things. Okay, why aren't his ranking file, not the people who already voted for Kamala who have something to lose, why aren't his rank and file abandoning him? Because this is what they elected him to do.
Well, they are slowly abandoning him. And
there's... Let me just get this straight, though. You honestly think that the people, because you keep going back to the election, so that's fine. We want to go backwards, that's fine. But you go back to the election, you're asking why people voted him, and you think that the majority of people voted for him because they wanted him to deconstruct
the system that wasn't serving them.
What they wanted was what he was promising: prices to go down day one, end the war in Ukraine,
and Gaza.
One. Nothing, none of that has happened, and the only response you have for that is just wait. It'll happen in the future.
Well, you also responded. It's Biden's market.
Just wait, or let's look at Biden. Let's look at Obama. Let's look at everyone else. That's how we got here. So it doesn't matter what we do, because we can blame it on why we got here. It's the ends justify the means. So who cares if the mother had to make a split-second choice between leaving the country herself or bringing her cancer-stricken child with her? But that doesn't matter because it's Biden's fault. So regardless of what happens in the aftermath, it doesn't matter because Biden got us here. That seems to be your argument.
This is why people can't have a constructive conversation, because to frame this discussion so that you can simply dismiss what I'm saying. I'm not making an argument. How we got here actually matters, right? The reason why we could be lied to the way we're lied to is because we somehow forgot that history informs the context of what is happening. We have the 2024 election is not even just last November is outdated. Doesn't matter anymore. Seriously, that is not how the world works. How the world works is you get to a certain spot based on what you actually experienced. What did America actually experience that led to a plurality win for Donald Trump? No, we're not going to ask that question, right? We'd rather dismiss them just like you want to dismiss me, right? And
we're not dismissing you. We're listening to everything you're saying.
Please don't say we're dismissing you. But we want to hear this.
Here's the thing. The reason why 78 million Americans, as I said, broadly, all seven of the key states, right? Every state in the country trended towards Trump. Every state, okay, how? Why? Okay, why that happened is because the economics of the last 30 years did not serve the majority of Americans. Full stop. If you look at the working class, if you look at the middle class, Federal Reserve data said that 2021, the top 1%, for the first time in U.S. history, have more wealth and income than the entire American middle.
You sound like a Democrat.
I have been a Democrat, and I have nothing but contempt for the Democratic Party because they talk.
Well,
they talk the talk, and then they join hands with Dick Cheney, and they honor George W. Bush.
You don't like collaboration, or?
Well, let me be clear. Let me just summarize a few things, though. Let me summarize a few things because I've listened to everything you said, and I don't argue what you're saying. But first of all, you touted the benefits as a centrist like Tulsi Gabbard. But then you said the reason for the demise is centrists like Mitt Romney and Bill Clinton. So I'm just wondering how the centrist thing works, because if you're a centrist, which is really what America is, they're trying to
Yes.
find the middle, and sometimes even more majority is saying, okay, I'm a little center right, but I am centrist. Who is Bill Clinton? Then you're touting Bernie Sanders, who is an extreme liberal, a profound self-proclaimed socialist, as being something special. And all I've ever said is his support came from 12 million young people wondering if there's anything left for them. So somewhere in the middle, so let's be clear, Mitt Romney, not Hillary Clinton, was the father of Obamacare. Mitt Romney put in place Obamacare in Massachusetts. It was the model for Obamacare. Hillary Clinton can be touted the person that did it because her husband said Hillary's going to do it, but she didn't do crap. She didn't do it. Mitt Romney did it, the centrist. And as far as Tulsi Gabbard, who you're profoundly saying is going to end the endless wars, there was one president, and only one in history, that ended an endless war. And his name was Joseph Biden. Because 20 years of bullshit, and Joseph Biden called bullshit on a bullshit war. Now, I just had a lieutenant colonel on this show who I respect dearly. 30 years to the day. He's 7 years in reserves and then 23 years active duty. Lieutenant colonel, a helicopter pilot in Iraq. I was watching his videos of him flying over Iraq. Said the reason that the pullout of Afghanistan was so horrifiably despised is because he left Bagram behind. He left Bagram. We should have kept Bagram. And all I've ever said is presidents don't order exits. Presidents don't put the exit plan in place. They just order the exit. So the general said, let's leave Bagram empty-handed. So these are all clearly, this is Trumpism. Let's seize on a mistake. Let's make it, every time he fucks up anything, his supporters say he's right. I've said, he can literally jump on the resolution desk, take a shit on the floor, right with the cameras rolling, and his supporters are saying it's brilliant. This was amazing politics. And it's just, and that's why I say I don't have Trump derangement disorder. I have Trump supporter derangement syndrome. I'm just trying to understand where the love comes from. The guy has literally, his whole 100 days has been nothing but a shitstorm and a failure, and his supporters are saying it's genius because he's swinging the bat hard. Yeah, he's swinging the bat hard at innocent people and beating them to death.
Yeah, you know what, Coach Drippy? I mean, you said a lot in there. First and foremost, to characterize Mitt Romney and Tulsi Gabbard as the same because they're both centrists, right? It's to totally abuse that word. First and foremost, Mitt Romney is a neocon. Tulsi Gabbard is not a neoliberal, right? She is a Hawaii centrist Democrat. If you go to Hawaii and you look at the Democratic Party, it's a progressive party. Okay.
Hang on, let me tell you something about Hawaii, because I lived there for 2 years. There's one key factor that makes you a success. You have to be fun to look at, and you will succeed in Hawaii. That's all she has going for her. That's it. The woman is the national security advisor and did not realize that a text message was going to reporters about an imminent air raid on the Sudan. And she is the national security advisor. So when you say Hegsworth didn't know, I always said Hegsworth hasn't even run a Taco Bell. He shouldn't be running the Defense Department. But when you're literally looking at the National Security Party and National Security Advisor as a person that is okay with texting on a text platform that kids text on, we've got an issue there with our national security.
So that we understand the context of this conversation, the three of you are on one side, and I'm on one side. Okay?
No, three of us disagree.
No, Beth,
we disagree a lot.
No, because you, Coach, if you're gonna give a speech, and then I'm trying to respond, and then you interject, and then give another speech, and then Beth jumps in, and then Charlie jumps in, and so like I'm trying to get a point across. It's about what is true about what we are experiencing, about the things that are actually going to have the broader impact on our lives. And that is what I'm trying to talk about. I'm not supporting the madness. I don't think it's a good thing. Don't put words in my mouth that we're throwing.
I don't think
we American citizens are sitting in a foreign jail, or people are sitting in a foreign jail where their due process rights haven't been listed. No, I don't respond to most of what Trump does because he floods the zone with a bunch of viral stuff so that we all run around chasing our tails about everything he says. He does that on purpose so that dilute our efforts to focus in on what is actually going on. What is the core?
Which is why I asked you, like, are we getting your point clearly? So is it what you're saying is that people voted for Trump to basically tear everything down and rebuild it to be more relatable to the everyday, more broad spectrum of people?
For the middle class and the working class who voted for Trump, this is about reversing the impact of globalization. Globalization, installed in the 80s and the 90s, right, served the professional class and created the greatest wealthy class in history. And
I think we all agree with you there.
it's right. Okay. So the way you do that, though it's never been done before, by the way, reversing globalization. But the way you do that is massive international tariffs, which set off tariffs on the other side. So by the way, Tesla might get a pass on our imposed tariffs, but every other country in the world where Tesla would like to sell is going to impose tariffs on Tesla. And so what I'm trying to say to you here is that's an effort to dismantle the economics that created Elon Musk, that created the billionaire class on behalf of the middle class and the working class. Because what? If those tariffs are codified by the Congress, now they are fully permanent constitutional and stuff like that, what that will force capital to do, corporations, to have to bring production back to America, because the economics of building it overseas will no longer work because of the mutual tariffs on both sides of the fence. So that's what I'm saying. That's what he's trying to do, right? Yeah, he did a 90-day pause to give the billionaires a little breathing room because he's about to codify Congress. That's what's going to happen.
So let's be clear, though, on the tariff deficits, on the trade deficit. Let's just talk about something. I can't use specific countries. A country where we bring in a lot of soybean. Over the course of the last 10 or 15 years, people are trying to eat healthier. Soybean, soy milk, soy everything has become more popular. So this country is selling us X amount of soybean. Let's just use the operative figure, $1 billion worth of soybean. We're at $1 billion negative with this country. This is a poor country. Are they going to be buying our cars to even out $1 billion worth of Ford F-150s, aluminum, $50,000 beautiful pieces of engineering? Are they going to be buying those to even out? I mean, where does the trade war resolve itself? Or like Donald Trump says, now that we're in a trade war with China, kids will have $2 versus $11. But the problem is somebody phrased it perfectly. There is a clear disconnect with the reality that Americans want to wear Nikes. They don't want to sew Nikes. They don't want to make Nikes. They don't want to work for $12 an hour making blue jeans. They don't want those jobs. They want to work for Twitter from home with a beautiful snack fridge next to them, like I have. Yeah. And then they want to get obese and diabetes, and then dip into Obamacare's benefits, but say they're ultra conservatives.
You are in Florida, right? I'm sorry. The textile industry wasn't paying $12 an hour when we were doing these things in America. That's the kind of nonsense. When Nike can labor shop for the lowest cost, most environmentally friendly for the company, markets to produce their goods and services. If you bring the production back to America, those production jobs will pay better, just like they did in the 70s, just like they did in the 80s before we closed down, pushed everything overseas and stuff like that. It will raise prices, but people could afford them. The problem with cheap stuff is the costs of globalization. Yes, it lowered the cost of the products, right? But it took away the income of the middle class and the working class.
No, because let's be clear on textile for a second. Textiles, the greatest investor in the world lost everything twice on textiles. Do you know what Berkshire Hathaway is? Berkshire Hathaway is Warren Buffett's company. Do you know what it was? It was a textile business that went bankrupt. That's what he bought, a bankrupt textile business because of competition overseas. He also bought Dexter Shoes for $8 billion, and it went bankrupt because of competition overseas. But you know what business learned? You can't compete with overseas. We are never going to be in a position that people are going to be willing to pay $90 for a pair of Levi's. The economy will never be that strong strong. There is no gain to this policy.
I think you really forgot what the economy was like when working class people could afford to buy a house. The reason why working class people used to be able to afford to buy a house, used to be able to save to send their kids to school, is because incomes, even non-college educated incomes in America, were enough to access the American dream. We gave that away by allowing our multinational corporations to labor shop around the world, commoditizing our labor. So how people turning us into a service industry type, in terms of non-college educated folks, right? And this is what has depressed the earnings of the working class and the middle class in America. And what they're trying to do is go back to that economy. I'm not saying it's going to work. Again, it's never been done for a $27 trillion economy. But I'm saying this is what he's actually doing. And if you want a bellyache about whether it's successful or not, you have to at least grapple with the reality that the reason why he's being elected to do it is because most people in the country, the big middle class, working class, were not served by globalization. This is America's Brexit. It's the same reason why the British voted to exit the European Union, because domestic middle class and working class people were not served by the European Union, only the professional class and British billionaires. Okay.
But I think we need to make note that Brexit also failed.
Brexit failed miserably, but hang on. Let Charlie take the floor for a bit. Hang on. Let's let Charlie. We haven't heard from Charlie in a bit.
It did not fail. The class and the working class who voted for Brexit got the UK to exit the European Union.
I can go on a tangent about Brexit, but let Charlie take the floor for a minute, and then I'll go on a tangent about Brexit, because you're posing Brexit as a grand success or
that story. I'm saying the motivation of the
motivation was propaganda caused by a company called Cambridge Analytica.
Wait up. That is talking down to people as if they don't understand how hard it is to keep food on the table, right? This is working class, middle class people saying the government that's supposed to be working for us is making our life harder by coming up with a policy of economics where we can't take care of ourselves and our family. So therefore, we're throwing them out. That's what they achieved. That's what the 78 million Americans who voted for Trump is trying to do. They're saying Obama, Biden, Mitt Romney, all those people who benefited and who installed the neoliberal, neoconservative project did not serve the middle class of this country, did not serve the working class in this country. And I would have much preferred the anti-establishment political revolution that Bernie Sanders was offering. Instead, when we snuffed out that side of the Democratic Party and emasculated Bernie, right? They moved not to Hillary. Who the hell is going to do that, right? They moved not to Biden. Who the hell is going to do that? They moved to Trump, right? And so,
there's another tangent I can go on. I will say this about Brexit.
Let me just finish.
When you say, hang on, let me just make this point.
No, I'm saying, Coach, we're getting a vitriolic over response. A lot of it is blunt force. I agree. I don't agree with most of the techniques or the style or the approach or the viral comments and stuff like that. What I agree with is that the American people wanted this for that reason, that they were not being served. Will this serve them? This is freedom. This is freedom is just another word for nothing left.
But this is not freedom. If you're taking people's constitutional rights, it's not freedom.
No, you've just trapped on the foundation of freedom when you take away due process. That's dictatorship.
People, it's a Janis Joplin song, a lyric, and it means something. Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. Hello? Okay, I'm not going to give me a lecture series on what freedom literally means. It's a point. When people get to a point where they're not vested in your system of economics, they want to get it dismantled. That's what you're facing.
But okay, I just want to say one more thing before and then we'll let Charlie talk. But I just want to say, yes, we have heard that, I think the same statement, just in different ways from the start. Okay, we get it, but you can't take people's freedom or completely gut the Constitution, the foundation from which the entire country was built upon.
That's what's happening.
No, you're
That is what's
absolutely right.
happening.
No, you just nailed it.
Dismantling everything we stand for.
Constitutional.
Yes.
Again, look, I have a JD. I have my law degree. I'm telling you how the Constitution works is not as cut and dry as you say it. Constitutional actors have their prerogative, and over time, the living document reflects what it actually means. And what I'm saying to you is absolutely right. That the president is exercising his prerogative, and the courts are exercising their prerogative, and the Congress will interject and exercise its prerogative, the separations of power and stuff like that. This is how it was under Biden, under Obama, under under Clinton,
No.
way back. It is no different.
If you have a lawless administration, you're going to have a lawless society.
Obama said it best. Imagine if I did what Trump did. Imagine if I disobeyed the courts. Imagine if, I mean, he was very articulate in his speech, and I'm not nearly as articulate as him, but it was funny the way he said it. And granted, he was presenting himself as a minority president who had to obey the rules and had to be articulate. And Trump is just this foul-mouthed cad. But the truth of the matter is, break it down to what it is. He's disobeying the courts at the highest level in the country, and that is the interpreters of the Constitution. And generally, it's conservatives who have turned the Constitution into an antiquated diatribe. Now, Trump has just taken that Constitution, wiped his ass with it,
Yep.
and disobeyed clearly 6 conservative judges and said, I am not obeying your one single order. Now, that's a slap in the face to our entire way of life. That is a concern.
Ridiculous.
To say the president has that right, and to even argue the president has that right when that argument's been posed, and he's won that argument. In the last ruling, when Judge Roberts wrote the president has to be aggressive in his approach, but then if he's too aggressive, it is us that has to answer the question. And they answered the question. They responded to the question, bring Abrego Garcia back, and he says no.
This is an individual ruling. It's not an abdication.
It's an issue.
Hold it.
It's a sign.
It is an issue.
It's like if you go outside and you see raindrops on your car and you say it wasn't raining. No. There's circumstantial evidence that says it was just raining. This is the prelude to a giant issue.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's an issue that's playing out, and it's still not done yet. And stuff like that. All I can say to you here is within the context of an immigration policy intended to reverse 8 to 10 million undocumented people, unfiltered folks allowed in the country in the 4 years preceding this administration, stuff like that. I mean, it is trivial. And so you can make it, you can exaggerate, hyperbole, head explode. This is what Trump does over and over and over and over and over again, and stuff like that. But what's the meat? Where's the thread of what's actually important about what he's doing, right? I mean, so fine. This is the derangement syndrome, is that we lose our minds and have no idea why the majority of the Americans supported him, right? And why they're not abandoning him now. And this is what I'm saying. People who have something to lose are going to be very threatened, right? Because he's dismantling the system that benefited them, okay? And stuff like that. So I expect that from them. That's self-interest or whatever. But we all admit, he's just taking a wrecking ball to things, right? And we'll see how it plays out when the budgets come out for all these departments, when the priorities are set, when the tariffs are either codified or not. We will see the Supreme Court make decision after decision after decision. They will frame what they're going to do, right? But they do. But the thing is, the limits of the court, in their own words, is a political line, and so you will see they will tread lightly in how they try to impose, when the American public have already spoken. This is why it's so important to Trump that the Congress codify his tariff policy. And so that's the subject. Can we get to, okay, is our economics serving most people in our country? If not, what are we going to do about it? Why can't we get into that kind of conversation, right? Because he's not going to have the capability of creating the new economy. That's us. That's what we should be doing while he's dismantling the one that didn't serve most people.
Because we shouldn't so easily just go, well, he just wants to gut the Constitution, and we should just go along with it to see that if it's going to economically benefit us, and we just can't. That it's
going to gut the Constitution, and we don't have anything to say to each other because
when you're gutting the Constitution, you're no longer in a democracy. That is
no, a democracy involves voting.
Hang on.
This is
Charlie, take the floor.
Yeah, please.
Take the floor, Charlie. Give him a... Well, let Kevin finish.
This is another throwout line, right? This is not a democracy. 78 million Americans, almost 150 million Americans voted. Wait, what do you mean not a democracy? You know what not a democracy is? Not one person in the Democratic primary voted for Kamala Harris. That's not a democracy. When you have,
I just want to say, I've heard that a lot, but she had to
primaries. Hold it. When you have contested primaries against a competitive Republican field and you win, that's democracy. When you have a contested general election against someone who is spoon-fed $1.2 billion to spend in 3 months, more than any candidate in history has had and stuff like that, and you lose, that is democracy, right?
No, I'm not saying. Yeah, that was democracy.
That was democracy. And you know what? We're part of the party that acknowledges the loss.
Elections have consequences.
Hey, Heard.
All this pearl clutching. Oh my God, he's doing.
You can't make that point. You can't make that point straight faced. We've acknowledged the loss. You're literally beside a president that cried for 4 years. He got robbed of an election. We blatantly acknowledged the loss. You won. He is the elected president.
That was exactly what democracy looked like.
Yes,
we acknowledged
not what he
long.
presented. Not by bashing it for 4 years straight. Not by being disagreed by your own attorney general, Bill Barr, one of the most dedicated lieutenants to the conservative movement. Trump and Bill Barr called Trump's allegations about the election bullshit in his own words. And you've got a president crying for 4 years like a child that he has been robbed of the election. But hang on. There's so much to unpack here. I want Charlie to unpack some of it. Hang on, let Charlie get started.
I'm on a hard time limit here, so I got to go. But I'll just say, in terms of Congress allowing to do it, I mean, they really are. I think about just the tariff issue. I don't believe any other president has done this, and he's still been writing on this, that the reason he's able to use these broad executive powers is because he's declared an economic emergency. Now, there's a growing movement in Congress, but it's not enough, and I think it's mostly being spearheaded by people what's his name there? I forget his name, but anyway, there is some movement of them trying to take that power of the purse back, but there's too many of them that are just afraid of getting primary that they won't go. I mean, it's such an obvious thing to manipulate this emergency clause to take the power of the purse from Congress. I mean, that is really an attack on our Constitution, and I mean, it's never been done before.
It wasn't President Biden. It wasn't President Biden who used the emergency legislation to actually do a campaign promise and forgive student loan debt. It wasn't President Biden who did that, and the Supreme Court said no. You can't do it.
Right. The Supreme Court said
he abided by the Supreme Court,
and he abided by the ruling.
It was over.
What do you mean? When Trump does it, oh my God, the whole Constitution.
Because he doesn't abide by the ruling.
He did the same damn thing to justify his student forgiveness program. He used emergency legislation instead of the original student loan program that gave him the authority to do so.
And the process worked. They're trying.
They did.
No, and I don't think, and I agree. I don't think Trump's argument for declaring an economic emergency would sustain the Supreme Court. But that's what have I been saying? He has to get the Congress. This is his first budget coming up. He has to get the Congress to codify if he wants to make his tariff. If his tariff policy is supposed to be a permanent policy to reverse globalization, Congress has to endorse it.
We don't want to do that. We really.
All right, guys, I got to run.
Oh, Charlie, I'm so sad you have to leave. So I wish I'd known.
We're 11:15. I was supposed to be done at 11. So.
Okay. Oh, bye.
Thank you, Charlie. We're gonna do it again.
Shoot, I wish I'd have known. I would have shut up.
No.
Well, probably not. But
I actually was the one rambling more than anybody. I didn't realize he was on a timeline.
I didn't either. I'm so sorry.
No, it's my fault. But let's continue the
Yeah, let's blame
conversation.
you. Okay.
Let's continue the conversation.
Well,
Let's
okay.
talk about Congress codifying the tariffs. Tariffs are a tax. Congress should always be responsible for codifying
Yeah,
taxes.
that's
This
right.
has been a blatant. All presidents have used tariffs to their advantage. It's their one thing that they have. Just like the Marines is their own private army. When they can't get congressional approval to send military in somewhere, they send the Marines in because that's their own private army. They can do that. They can slip past the goalie. Tariffs is slipping past the goalie. When you impose it at 145%, so literally a crate of flip flops coming from China for $10,000 will now have a $14,500 tariff on top of the initial cost of $10,000. You've just created whatever you want to call it. Of course, I'm using flip flops as the metaphoric product, but you've just created a problem for a lot of people who may just need a white T-shirt for their new job. So when you're talking about or a black T-shirt. I
Make,
know a lot of times you get hired by a local restaurant and they want you to wear a black
make
T-shirt. And
them
actually, a gas station by my house, literally a part of their snacks, under the snacks is black T-shirts in all different sizes because a lot of the kids go there for their first day at work. So you've just created a problem
yeah.
for a kid wanting to start a job. These are things that have been argued routinely to Donald Trump, and everybody's saying he's breaking down this awful system. The
Yeah.
system isn't awful. It needed some tweaking, and everybody's acknowledging that you can say for all that the globalization is the demise of what happened to the middle class. It's really not, because there was also automation. So if China is making flip flops for $3 an hour, and we're not making flip flops for $23 an hour. You can also look at your local car factories and see all the robots that are building those cars. Those are jobs lost. Those were $30, $40, $50 an hour jobs with benefits. Ford was spending $75 an hour on an average employee, and now they're being replaced by automation, robots, and automated assembly
Coach,
lines. So every time everybody blames the demise of the middle class on globalization, there is still the simple fact of automation. It
Mhm.
is more responsible for job loss than anything to do with globalization.
now that, okay. There is no doubt that technology. There's no doubt that technology is a dampening effect on human labor because machines, right? The machines can replace some of their productivity, and they do it better, and they don't need breaks, and they don't need healthcare. All that's true. Technology is going to have its impact. There's no doubt about it.
To the point where Bill Gates is predicting a 2-day work week because of AI.
You can't just filibuster and then I'm starting to respond to you, and then you want to interject.
I just wanted to interject that one
Right.
thing.
But okay, so here we go. All right. All you have to do is look at the basic economic data since globalization was established in the 1990s with NAFTA, right? Okay, in 1992 all the way up to here. Okay, who did it benefit? This is not debatable, right? When current Federal Reserve data says that 60% of America cannot afford a $1,000 unexpected expense. 60%.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is the state of America. We deindustrialize the country.
And
right?
it's unconstitutional to help people out with their bills.
Hey, you know what? When people, all I'm saying here is that when you have an economic policy that doesn't serve the majority of the people, and you're in a democracy, what you're going to get is what has happened in every major democracy across the global north, from Japan to Canada to the United States. For the first time in history, electorates around the world in the global north, the established countries, right, have rejected the incumbents. Why? Because they were not serving the economic.
Oh, I think we're going to see that for a long time. I think.
No. This is the first time it's ever happened for a reason. There's something that we need to learn something. And
wait. It's the first time we rejected an incumbent.
No, the first time in global democratic history that all the major democracies, from Japan through Europe into the United States and Canada, including Mexico, threw out their incumbents over the last 3 years. What I'm trying to say to you is why. The reason why is globalization did not serve the middle class and the working class of the global north. It helped the middle class and the working class in China.
So then why would you agree that Trump should bring that back?
I'm sorry?
Then why would you agree that Trump should bring that system back?
No, he's dismantling the globalization.
No.
That's what he's
doing. No, he wants to bring back manufacturing, right? Because he didn't win on a premise. Hold up. He did not win on a premise that we didn't have enough manufacturing jobs. He ran on a premise that inflation was too high, prices were too high, people couldn't afford those unexpected expenses, things like that. He ran on I'm going to lower prices on day one. I'm going to stop the war in Russia and Ukraine on within 24. Within 24 hours.
What you're saying
instead
part of the story. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
I would venture to guess that you were the only conservative or independent or Trump supporter who would argue globalization. If you ask your average everyday American what they why they voted for Trump.
Why they voted is the reason why I keep on saying the reason why they voted is because they can't earn the money that they used to earn to take care of their family and their friends. And now you add inflation, which became a thing under Biden.
And I would argue
20 years before Biden. What I'm trying to say here is it's that the economics is what caused the job loss. The economics.
Wait, what job loss? We had record unemployment. We had record unemployment numbers with Biden in office. This wasn't a jobs win. He didn't win on jobs.
Beth. This is a lie of the economists, right?
No, you can dislike what I'm saying, but you can't say it's a lie. This is not why he was elected.
Say why it's a lie. Yes,
okay.
It's a lie. It's a lie because people, if people have jobs, but they don't pay the bills, that's not good, right? The low unemployment rate speaks to the fact that people have jobs. The problem is that those jobs pay shit. I mean,
agree, totally. But that's not.
No. That's why it's a lie. Okay.
No.
You can't.
But when you're talking about, hang on. When you're talking about low wages.
This is economic data. People say a good economy is low unemployment.
I didn't say that.
A good economy is one where the working class and the middle class can afford to achieve the American dream. We don't have an economy that they can do that anymore. The average person can't afford to buy a house.
And what makes these tariffs why do you think these tariffs are going to make that American dream come true?
Here's the rationale. What globalization did was create economic incentives that allowed our companies to send their production jobs overseas to the lowest cost markets. Okay, what that did was take the jobs away from us and send it to where the jobs were cheapest. But the problem is that left a landscape of economic jobs here in the United States into the service industry and lower paying jobs. Okay, the theory is if you raise the costs of the goods being imported into the United States, right, through high tariffs, right, it will take the economic incentive that we gave to these companies to move the jobs overseas and force them to move it back here. And that is the theory. Like I said, I'm not saying
we have imposed tariffs on China. I'm sorry, Trippy. I'll let you speak in just a moment.
We're talking global tariffs. This is a whole
perfect.
He's talking about global tariffs.
Yes, I know. He made 200 deals with 190 nations. I understand. Or countries. I get it.
A whole different regime. But do you understand what I'm saysaying? You're changing the economic.
I understand what your argument is. But what I'm saying is, I understand what you're saying as far as the rationale for why people, or why Trump is doing what he's doing, and why people, when they voted, supported that. Or, in your opinion, supported that.
If you raise the cost of goods produced overseas, does it gut the economic benefit from
right, but
to use slave labor to produce their goods? Yes, it forces them to move back to the domestic market.
Again, he did this in 2016. He put tariffs on China because we were tired of being robbed.
It was a neocon Trump, and he did not expect. No, it's true.
Okay, fine, but there were tariffs put on China because we were tired of being ripped off. Got it. And it brought back how many and even Biden.
We're talking about. This is an anti-neocon,
we need to come to an agreement that those tariffs and that E equals MC square looking it doesn't make sense. He put tariffs on an island that is only inhabited by penguins. We have a surplus with Australia, but yet put tariffs on them. So really, it doesn't have a rational.
The rational thought, again, it's not. You can take an isolated tariff and say it's stupid. The thread of the rationale is to create a tranche around the United States to where if you want to produce around the world and sell back into our 340 million population and stuff like that, we're going to make it very expensive for you to do it.
No, we're going to make it very expensive.
But if you do want to sell in America, you got to build it in America. Right. That is okay. That is the theory of how you raise the income of American labor. That is the theory.
That is, but that's not right because we can't afford our own goods. I mean, I'm sorry to keep treading on you, Trippy, but
what do you mean? We could afford.
No, I'm fine with it.
This was the economy. If you look at the economics of America from 1950 to 1980, this was that economy. The economy where we made everything here.
Tariff wars have never worked in history.
Warren Buffett just recently said
that is such an ignorant statement, right? Because we're not talking about randomness right here. I am saying that we had the greatest economy, the greatest wealth and income equality that we experienced in America was between 1950 and 1980. And the reason why is because the CEO only made 20 times the average worker's pay. You know why? Because we were paying the workers a lot. We were paying the average working class person could own a house. Okay, that happens when you produce in your country. You have to pay America. You have to deal with American environmental laws. You have to pay your people. You have to give them benefits like pensions, like they used to have pensions.
Right.
Okay. All those benefits, which do raise the cost of goods, but we made more. We made enough money.
Yes, but
people talk about the misery index of the 70s and stagflation, but the standard of living of the average person in America was better. Right?
You can say yes. My statement that tariff wars have never worked is ignorant. But the fact of the matter is, you are arguing two separate points. You're arguing we need to bring back manufacturing to America. We need to bring those prices, those wages for Americans higher. But the Trump tax cuts benefit corporations,
100% corporations,
and those cuts and those savings that those corporations made, not one penny went back to the people.
2017 that you
it just made that gap.
It's the same policy now. The same policy now is going to be in place for the $4.5 trillion.
Trump's administration, for when he was elected the first time, was dominated by neocons because he did not think
the $4.5 trillion tax cut proposed now is going to wind up in the hands of business. It's the same proposal.
Corporate tax
it is a corporate tax cut. And literally, Trump went so far in his first tax cut to make the corporate tax cuts permanent and the personal tax cuts expire after his watch
2025. Yes.
Yep, after his watch expired. Now, let me be clear on one thing. When you say a statement from Beth, tariffs are destructive, is ignorant. Warren Buffett, the greatest economist of himself, said a tariff war is destructive, is ignorant. Making 7 billion people hate us in order to benefit 300 million people is ignorant. It's dreadful. It is a dreadful policy.
Yeah.
The world has globalized. This policy of Trump will never survive longevity. It will be reversed.
That I can tell you this much. That is great coming from one of the wealthiest billionaires in history. Right?
Okay, but it's not just about his net worth. It's not about his net worth because he lives on $100,000 a year income.
Look. That just takes nothing away from what I just said, right? We're talking about what is the economics that would have served the broad American public? This is what we're dealing with, is a political revolution that was based in democracy. This is the voice of the American people who have not been served over the last 30 years, right? Right. I'm not saying and advocating for the style, the method, the technique that Trump is using. What I'm trying to explain is what he's actually doing. This is supposed to be about information. This is not about just us, let's prove how smart we are and have something argument to say. Do we want to inform the people about what's happening right now?
From both sides of the spectrum, from both points of views. We want to inform the people from both sides of the argument.
Both sides of this is the crossfire nonsense that doesn't provide truth. What is true, right? I don't want to hear both sides of a lie, right? The conservative side, the liberal side. I am not coming here with an ideology. I'm saying to you what is literally true. And what is literally true based on the history that led us here is that he was empowered by an electorate that cut across the entire country, right? That cut across all major demographics, right? That belie the nonsense narrative that says that it's misogynist and racist and all this other stuff. All those people are always in every electorate, right? But this is the bulk American middle class and working class who have been disserved by the systems in place by both establishment parties over the last 33 years, right? And so what we're dealing with here is a repudiation of that. Now, it's ugly, it's stupid. Lots of things that I'm a climate guy. This guy, what he's doing to climate policy is devastating.
I was going to say your arguments sound very liberal, yet
I am focused on true. It's not
just in your opinion.
Hang on, can I say something though before when you proclaim the size of victory for Donald Trump, you're leaving out a lot of factors, including a president that was proven to be mentally and physically disabled in the midst of the election. So then came this random person, granted she was the vice president, who had 90 days to assemble a campaign. Now let's be clear, if Joe Biden realized his limitations, I'm saying it was
the Democrats owned that.
Yes.
The Democrats owned it. But here's the clear, when you proclaim his victory is the basis of my point. When you proclaim that he won all 7 swing states, I keep arguing 3 of them were by 1.5%. It does, because people are saying the size, the enormity of this victory.
It was not a huge.
It was not a huge statement for his policy.
Did Obama ever win all 7 swing states?
It's again, you're talking about it. You're leaving out all the circumstantial important facts.
I think you're going by states and not necessarily by numbers. Like if you, with the count of the third party electorate, the numbers were literally like 50-50.
Right.
No.
Right.
So it's always yes, and it's getting closer and closer.
That's the point of the Electoral College. Is saying if there was no Electoral College, California would elect every president.
Yeah.
Trivialize his win by trying to say the margins were thin in a context.
I was not even trying to trivialize it.
Historically thin by historical measures. Absolutely right. What I'm talking about is, yes, but if you look at the voting trend, and you look at the fact that 98% of all counties in America trended towards Trump. If you look at all 56,
that's not new.
Trump. No, this is a difference. All seven battleground states voted for Trump. I don't care how thin you think that margin is. That's what democracy is. 50
and why?
plus 1.
Why?
Why?
Why? What did he run on?
Well, I keep on
inflation.
Inflation, prices, groceries, a beautiful word, groceries.
That's what you said he ran on.
No, I can play clips.
We can. I can play an excerpt of J.D. Vance saying eggs are $5 a dozen, and behind him at Aldi's they were at $2.63
My point
on
is,
the sign.
Look, he ran on lowering prices, ending the war in Ukraine within 24 hours.
And Gaza.
These are not opinions. These are facts. Now, you may be digging deeper and going, no. He's going to dismantle this entire, we're going to build it back up from the beginning. We are going to make America great again.
Why? Okay.
Except you can't say, I'm going to just tear down the entire government and build it back up and say that's what people voted for, because that is not. He literally ran on lowering prices on day one.
How is his base doing?
90.
How is his base doing?
His base is faltering.
No, it's
base
not.
is going to suffer just like everyone else.
Is the people who got affected.
There were literally conservative senators who started speaking out. There's literally a conservative senator. I forgot his name. Who argued Putin is playing you like a fiddle. People are calling him out.
If you want to tell the listeners on this podcast that the Democrats are fighting the good fight, when in the eyes of Democratic voters, the party's in shambles, right? If you want to tell them that Trump is failing in what he's doing and his own base doesn't support him anymore, go ahead and do that, and let's see how that works out. Because actually, that's not true.
No, Trippy. The last time Trippy and we had this, I was on. I did say, the problem with the Democratic Party is they haven't coalesced behind. They don't have the unity that Trump supporters have. They critique their own party. Democrats, you will not see Trump supporters or MAGAs to critique until
Beth, did you observe the Republican primary season? So the Governor DeSantis from Florida, right? Vivek Ramaswamy, right? All these people, all these credible Republicans. Okay, that was an actual primary. What did we have over in the Democratic side?
Okay, let me just. I have to get this out. Wait, I have to get this out.
What?
The only reason Kamala ran was because she had to. The PAC money. The campaign money. If she was to use that campaign money, she had to use. Oh, that's Biden's hands down.
Okay, so
we are not arguing. We are not arguing. Why do you keep wanting to talk about Biden and Kamala? We agree that Trump won. We agree that Biden screwed the pooch, Trippy. We agree. I don't understand why we want to keep looking back. We are looking forward. Why do we want to keep arguing? We're not arguing an election.
But then deal with why the country elected him. Don't.
But that's what I'm trying to find out.
You want to just and
I'm trying to understand if they elected him on a certain point. Is he executing on those points?
Threads. You pick a couple of threads and say that's why they elected him, so that you can dismiss why they elected him. I'm trying to tell you.
No, I'm just saying.
They are not being hurt by the transition because they were not being served by the old economics.
But we would have to disagree on that because veterans are, and veterans are Trump's base.
Let me give you some data on just how impactful, right, the economics of the last 30 years were on the biggest demographic, white working class, okay, in America, the biggest demographic in America, right? Okay, right. There is a study called. There's a report that comes out of Princeton University, the U.S. Mortality and Morbidity Report. And in 2016, for the first time in global history, in the absence of a world war or a global pandemic, right, a demographic of America had actually a declining life expectancy. 3 years in a row. And that was non-college educated white men between the age of 40 and 54. Even black people in the crack epidemic of the late 80s, early 90s did not bend the life expectancy of black Americans. But what is going on in the white working class? They call it deaths of despair. When you have an entire category who have been so disenfranchised by the economics, by deindustrialization, that they can't take care of themselves and their family. And no one has any empathy for them because they're not the historically disenfranchised, right? They start killing themselves 10 times higher than any other demographic in the country.
Well, they can also kill themselves by overeating.
They overeat. They drink. They go on the opioid epidemic. All those things. You're right. It bent the life expectancy of white men in America. It didn't happen anywhere around the country, around the world. In America. And why? Because of the brutality of this economics. So when I say, yes, you'll admit that the election is, no, you need to understand why we got here and why people are saying they have nothing left to lose. Break this thing down. This. Why is the only energy in the Democratic Party Bernie Sanders and AOC going around the country? There is no energy in the Democratic Party. That's the only energy. Why? It's anti-establishment.
I think
He does
no.
have a
But here's
point
the thing.
there.
Well, totally. I think the Democratic Party is going through, like we said, some kind of I don't know, revolution or I don't know. The point being is, you make these arguments about the problems in this country,
Yeah.
and you say basically that things that Trump is putting in and the way he's going to dismantle this and dismantle that is going to help. But again, you have not stated how this tearing and dismantling is going to help the American people when tariffs are going to raise the cost on every single person in America.
Yes, they will.
In a time when we already can't afford it. And it takes years to get manufacturing back to the States.
So, Beth, let me, the response to that, and it's, you're absolutely right. Trump has acknowledged that fact. If just looking at the theory, if you radically raise the cost of import of goods manufactured elsewhere but sold in the United States, and then all those countries do the same, raise the cost of our goods sold out of the United States, what is that going to do is that changes the economic to where our companies are trying to sell to the American people, and our companies have to produce in America to sell to the American people, right? So we're bringing we're going from globalization to bringing our economy back into America. We got 340 million people. We actually that's how it used to be run in 1950 to 1980. Okay, and so until capital brings those production jobs back, and Americans start getting paid and getting the benefits for producing these things in America again, you're going to have a severe inflationary period. No question about it. Okay, this is normal in the transition from one system of economics to one theory of economics to another. For example, the last time we had anything of this magnitude was how we broke the back of stagflation coming out of the 70s. The Federal Reserve in 1980, with Paul Volcker, who was appointed by Jimmy Carter, by the way, right? Under the Reagan administration, Paul Volcker raised interest rates 11 percentage points in 1 year.
I remember.
Yeah. Okay.
I wasn't alive, but I remember.
Let's
my dad bought this house at 12%.
That put the misery.
It was 17% more.
That put the misery index over 20%. My point being is, in the short term, the recession of 1981 was catastrophic for a lot of people. It was extremely painful. But once capital adjusted to the new cost of money, and it created the longest period of economic growth in U.S. history through that time. Right. What I'm saying here is the transition is going to be chaotic. You
said we've never tried this before, but you're saying we just did it in the 70s.
Well, I can guarantee you the Federal Reserve never raised interest rates 11 percentage points in a year before, ever. Okay.
No, that's the same tear down model. That's the same tear down model that we've never tried before, but we've tried it before.
All I'm saying to you here is that's why I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm saying this is what he's trying to do and why he's trying to do it. You are absolutely right to say it's going to be hyperinflationary during the period between you raise the costs up front. That's the signal for capital to move back. It's going to take them some years to move back. In the meantime, everything is more expensive. And
it's a progressive tax.
Hang on, let me do this because we're going to have to continue this conversation. But I'm going to make the final statement. In theory and in practice, I can tell you this is not going to work for the simplest terms. America want to wear Nikes, not sew Nikes.
Right.
Those manufacturing jobs are not coming back to America. Right. This destructive approach is only going to benefit the billionaires. This is going to be a short-lived process that's going to cost dearly for everyone, including the major investors. And Trump will be, again, I guess you would say, I don't want to say the failure he typically is, because everything he touches generally turns to shit, but Trump will be, again, this guy that swings the bat really hard and gets nowhere. And that's what I see. It's just like they say about his own riches. He took $400 million from his dad. He parlayed it into $3 billion. Everybody said he could have just took that $400 million and put it in an index fund that got the $3 billion. He created 500 partnerships, 5 bankrupt companies, casinos shuttered in New Jersey, and he got the $3 billion. This is the same thing he's doing with America. It's the same philosophy. It's the destructive approach that gets you nowhere, but he proclaims victory everything he does. And it's just not, that's my theory. The only reason I'm saying we have to continue this conversation on to another, because it's a great conversation. It's just, I don't think people are going to listen to a show for 3 hours. So I'm going to say, let's continue the conversation. Let's do it again next week. I'll send out text. I can do it every week.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then right, we can, and then Beth, I obviously have the last word.
No.
Coach, you may be right. You may be right. And if it doesn't work, he will go down in history, literally go down in history as either the worst or one of the worst presidents.
No, he's going to go down in history because his supporters are going to say he was iconic in his approach.
But no, if because here's the thing. No, once you break, he is breaking it. Let's understand. He is breaking the globalization. He is breaking our international relationships with NATO, with the European Union. He's recalibrating. It will not be the same America. You elect someone else next time and stuff like that. They're not going back to what we had the last 30 years.
No.
So if it doesn't work, you're talking about a catastrophic failure for America, right? And maybe that's what we're.
That is what we are heading towards.
I can tell you this much: to the people who voted for him, they have nothing left to lose, and you
absolutely. But what they still have, and they lose, they're gonna miss. Beth, go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. No, that's a lot of pressure. But instead of getting off on that tangent on, how is this going to work, and arguing, that we clearly disagree on what the premise that Trump is coming in on, the bottom line is we can't throw out the foundation of our democracy. We can't throw out the Constitution, and that really is the most important.
And due process.
And Kilmar Abrego Garcia, we need to keep bringing up his name. We need it, and it's not that we think that he is a Maryland dad that's he could very well be a gang member. That's not the argument. The argument is we founded this country. Our forefathers fought for the Constitution. We can't just lackadaisically throw that out because Trump wants to get his agenda passed. I mean,
for some premier benefit.
Really, right. That's really the argument the strongest argument that I would have. And a lot of time wasted on, how do you think this is going to work? And that's true. It is really a waste because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the foundation that this country was built on.
So let me have the final word. And then I'm going to tell you this. You know what we're doing? We're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what we're doing. And anybody that supports him is supporting a big mistake, a big chronological mistake.
That's unfortunate, Coach. I don't think that we should be ending it that way. This is exactly what.
When you throw out due process, when you throw out the foundations of America, you've thrown the baby out with the bathwater.
No, this is exactly why the conversation is so vitriolic. To say to the people who have been disserved by their own government for the last 30 years that when they voted for change, they wanted Bernie's version. But when the Democrats snuffed that out, the only option for change that they had was Trump. And now you want to say that they were wrong for doing it. No, the problem.
No, I'm saying Trump is wrong for his approach. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it aggressively and effectively and professionally, and there's a way to do it Trump's way. And Trump's way is awful. It has proven itself awful over and over and over again.
Yeah, Kevin, you and I will have to get together and actually have a conversation. So I do this, the whole time on the podcast. But I would love to talk to you more about it. And
the people don't end it by blaming the people who have been disserved.
No, I'm blaming it on.
I think
no,
we put it
not
on
at
Trump.
all. Not at all. The people that have been
100%.
deserved voted, and they had that right to vote. But when you
Mhm.
let me be clear on what I'm saying. When you throw out due process, you might as well throw out democratic elections because it's another process that makes America what it is. That makes America great. We don't need to make it great again. It's still great. We need to improve it every day. We need to tweak it every day. We need to argue every day. But we don't need to throw out the processes that make it great because that's not going to make it great again. You're throwing out due process. You're throwing out the judge's opinions. You're disobeying a court that's completely on your side that you've nominated 33% of. You're disobeying them. 3 of the judges he nominated agreed. All 9 judges agreed. Alfredo Garcia should be returned to America. Hold him in a holding cell in America. Follow the process of due process. Come to a conclusion and then deport him if you want. That was skipped. They put the cart before the horse. And all we're saying is don't put him back on the street to run another gang. Allow him to be incarcerated in America until due process is followed. We're not arguing the point that he is taking horrible people off the streets. But we are also arguing the point that Obama took 1.2 million people in his 8-year run, returned them to their countries based on the premise that it was illegal activity. And he did it all following the rules of due process. So when you start your presidency off by putting 200 people on a plane, sending them off to Colombia, and Colombia is saying, we can't take these people. We don't even know who they are. You haven't even processed the paperwork. And he says, I'm going to impose tariffs if you don't take them. Say, fuck it, I'll take them. What am I going to do? Take a $10 billion sanction for 200 people? We don't know who they are. We're literally going to have to do face recognition on computers to even know who they are, to even know if they're Colombians. But I'm not going to argue this point if I'm facing $10 billion in prosecution charges.
This is a luxurious argument for people who clearly don't have.
You can't be luxurious when you're saying another president did differently and effectively.
God, I'm listening to both of you right there. This is a luxurious argument for people who clearly must not be facing the economics of the current state, where we can't afford. We have a housing affordability crisis in the country, where the economic opportunities to achieve the American dream primarily don't exist unless you can somehow start a business, but you don't. But how do you get savings to start a business?
Well, those are 2 great points that I would love to do again.
You all are talking about a legitimate issue, right? That's extremely narrow, that does not reflect the broad concerns of the people who are listening to this broadcast, right? Let's talk about what affects those people. I concede. I'm not arguing. No one's advocating for abdicating due process. That is a false herring. It is a true story, but it's a thread that is important in the whole forest. The forest of activity is you have a political revolution.
The biggest tree in the forest by 10 times the size.
However big the tree is, times. Most Americans are not concerned
when you throw out due process in America.
Concerned with how they take care of themselves and their family, how they provide for their future. And that has been devastated over the last 30 years. This is the problem. And until we speak to that and have these debates focused on that, right, we are just a part of the problem. The chattering class who talks about these pimples that don't affect most people. Like I said, I don't want this thing to happen to this guy. I agree. But that's not affecting most of the people. That is not the conversation, right? If this is the conversation you want to have,
I want to have it next week.
I was going to say, I didn't want to. No.
I want to have it next week. I want to continue, but we have to continue because no one will watch this show for more than an hour and 45 minutes.
That's about where we're at. We'll have to go
Let's
to
like, share, subscribe, comment. You guys have friends. Tell them to watch the show.
Yes,
and let's spread the word because I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to put out another thing. I'm going to put out a tutorial every week for 17 states that have passed extremely extensive restrictive voter laws. I'm going to start talking about how Democrats need to understand those restrictive voter laws and stop arguing the point that they're restrictive and inhibitive because they're only inhibitive to Democrats because generally Republicans are more dedicated voters. We're going to start talking about 17 states in particular about tutorials on how to be registered to vote when the time comes. But that's for the next, and we're going to do this again because it's been incredible. Like, share, subscribe, comment. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Charlie. I hope you watch this show to see me say thank you because I appreciate the hour and 15 minutes you spent with us, and I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon.